Hello and welcome to Gary's Garage. Today we have this Mazda. It's a 2008 Mazda 3 with the big 2.3 and 4-cylinder inside. These things scoot pretty good. Today we got a few jobs. First up is the front brakes. Front brakes on this car, there's lots of pad, but they're the original rotors. Someone did a pad slap, which means you replace the pads without the rotors. Without machining the rotors, and then you get a material transfer mix, causes a vibration. These rotors may be physically warped. The vibration is so bad. We're going to put a dial gauge on it, take a look and see how bad it is. I'll show you that in a minute. And so we're just going to put some new rotors, new pads, and service the slide pins and things like that. So pretty simple job, but let's show you what we got. Here is two new rotors and brake pads from Raybestos. I've used Raybestos before, and I find that their rotor quality is very good. Even though they're made in China, the rotor qualities are very good. Good steel, good machining process, and so I recommend them to all my friends and stuff like that who looking to buy something at a good price. So this is what we're going to put on. We're going to need a little brake lube to prepare the pads and to service the caliper pins, and of course to clean it up we got some brake pad. These rotors are covered in an oil or wax material from the factory, and they need to be cleaned before you can use them. So let's get the car in the air and get this job started. Right, so first up is to remove these spring clips. These are anti-rattle clips. Make sure they're in good shape. And then we're going to remove because we're doing the brakes, we're going to remove the caliper via the slides, undo the slides. There's little rubber caps on the back. Just use a screwdriver, get those off, and then I'll get some tools. I've turned the wheel to make access a little easier, and I already cracked this one, and it's a 7mm Allen. They shouldn't be overly tight. They're usually about 25 or 30 foot-pounds. We'll check that when we're putting it back together. And then I can buzz these out, and I'm going to get my hook. I'm going to hook up the calipers. They're going to service the calipers. We're going to press the pistons in, clean them up, clean the surfaces where the pads go, to make sure that we're all good. The car is a little rusty, although it's not terrible for its age at 2008. It's a 15-year-old car. You know, in some climates it would be a goner already, but out in the prairies here, cars survive a little longer. So let's get that hook. You can buy specially made hooks. I just took a piece of rod and bent it into an S. Just a little pull will get the piston to go in a bit. Pads come off. There we go. And we want to make sure we don't. This is a cast iron. So there's the pads, they're the ones with the ears. And then there's the springs that hold it inside the position, inside the caliper. Now I can hook this up. Get it on there, make sure there's no tension on the hose And now we're ready to take the bracket off. Alright, take the caliper bracket off. It's a 17 millimeter. I like to use a power bar because the torque for these bolts is usually somewhere between 80 and 90. And so you're going to need some power. There we go. And now I'm just going to get a tool so I can buzz these out quickly. This is the opportunity when you first take them out, is to take a look to see if they were put in with Loctite. Right? Some manufacturers have Loctite on these bolts, and they recommend you add Loctite when you reinstall them. So there's the caliper bracket. We're going to take that to the vise and take a wire wheel or whatever we need to do to get that cleaned up. And now we're ready to get this rotor off. Because that hasn't been off probably in the life of the car or whatever, it is going to probably need a little hammering. So let's see what we can do here. Okay, as you can see, I've got the dial gauge set up and zeroed. I've just got the pointer in the middle of the rotor. It could, we could do, if you want to get technical, you could do the outside, the inside, the middle, see if there's any variations, mark the high spots, see if the warpage is, like twisted or whatever. But we're just going to look at what the run out is. And we're already at about 8.5 thou run out. So I'm pretty certain I backed up -1. So that's like 9.5, 10 thou of run out. And a couple thou, 1 thou is okay, but this is like way over. And so this is an indication this rotor is pretty warped. It's also a possibility that underneath where the rotor mounts onto the hub, that it wasn't cleaned, and might not be set so just the whole rotor is moving. But in any way, these rotors are seized onto the hubs, so it's a good indication of maybe rust underneath, making it worse. So, but there's an indication that these rotors probably can't be saved. So we're just going to put the new ones, clean up the hubs, and put the new ones on. So here we go. Hoping to impact it and maybe break up the rust, and hopefully it'll come out. I don't like hammering on the rotors directly. Can break, and if it breaks, shards of metal can come off. So be cautious. Using something like a piece of wood gives the impact without, I don't know if you guys can see, and there we go. We are loose. Good God, man. Inside the rotor's not too bad. Surface is rusty, but no buildup, so we're good. We're gonna be able to just clean this up, put some new stuff on. Here we go. All right, to push the piston, if you don't have a tool, use a C-clamp. So you orient the C-clamp this way, and then you can rotate
inside. And then you want to position it on the back however you need so that the screw pod is in the center. You don't want it offside, you don't want to skew the piston as it's going in. And that may mean it, you know, that looks kind of funny at the back, but you don't need a lot of force. And you just want to, and make sure the rubber seal isn't getting pinched or whatever. And then just slowly back it in. Now before I did this, I checked the master cylinder to make sure there was enough room for the fluid that I'm going to displace here to go back up into the master cylinder without overflowing. I think I'm going to get away with doing the first one, but the second one I think I'm going to have to extract some fluid. So now that's on the bottom, and you don't have to squeeze it in super tight or anything like that. So I just take that out and our piston is in. So I just want to clean the surface. It's actually not bad. This looks pretty good. And the rubber seal is completely folded and it's not interfering with the contact area between here and the pad. So we'll be able to put these together, and we're just going to clean up these ears here before we put the pad in. So we're going to clean this up. So next up is to do this and to do the caliper bracket. So take you along for that. Got the caliper bracket in the vise, and I got my wire brush. Trying to do is get into these grooves, because that's where the ears of the brake pads run. So I have a couple of different wire brushes that go on drills. There's lots of other options that you can do. All you're trying to do is get any rust buildup that's on there. So if it is bad, you can use a file and you know, and take down the high spots if you think it's going to be an issue. Certain designs is more critical than others. Some may have stainless steel hardware that goes in the slot. This particular design doesn't use that. So we're just going to lubricate these and put it back together. And that's all you need to do with this. Alright, so brand new rotors are, let's use a little bit of brake clean, and you can rub them out and you will get very small metal, steel particles, as well as the oils or waxes, whatever they use to protect it. That was not shut. There we go, flip it over. While you're doing your brake job, you may touch the surface with your dirty gloves or your hands that might have oil on them, or grease or whatever, and even the oil from your skin can get on the surface. So you pre-clean them, but once you put them on, you may want to clean them again if you've touched them. So that's typically what I'll do is install it, and then I'll clean it one last time before putting the pads on. So let's do that. Alright, so here's a little fluid film. Especially if you live in those rust belts, you'll want to give these a little spritz, and that is to prevent the rust in between the rotor and the hub assembly there, because rust can cause it to build up and jack. There wasn't as much rust here, but it's always a good idea. Not tons, just a little. in place. There we go. I'm going to take a nut and spin this on. I don't think it'll go down all the way. Pretty close. Yeah, and that'll hold it in place while I get the caliper bracket on and stuff like that. Okay. All right, next up is install the caliper bracket. I've cleaned up the mating surfaces both on the hub and on the bracket, and I've cleaned the threads off the bolts. Do not lubricate them. The torque settings are for dry. Position them, and the bolts, typically on all cars I've worked on, thread into the bracket. So that way, for some reason, if it gets cross-threaded or damaged, you can just buy a new bracket and new bolt instead of having to replace the knuckle. There we go. Get these in, and I have to look up the torque number on this. Should be between 80 and 90. So I'll go look this up and then we'll torque it. So the bracket, the bolts here are 75 foot-pounds. So I was off by a little bit, and that's the reason why you look it up. Although I'm sure it probably could have stood 80. There we go. And for those metric guys, that's about 100, close to 100 Newton meters, maybe 99 or 98 Newton meters. There we go. Rotor on, rotor's cleaned, this is ready. So now we want to prepare the brake pads and get those installed and do a final clean. Alright, so I've cleaned this surface. There's a tiny bit of rust on there, but yeah, it's not too bad. So just, I use my finger, you can use a brush or whatever, but just apply a small amount of the silicone grease to this surface. Now, this is the surface that contacts the brake pad, and and then you put some lubricant on the back of the ears as well. And we're going to do the pad. I do both sides because, you know, just to make sure we've got the surfaces covered properly. And then when you get to the pad, we going to go around the pad where the piston contacts, and you can put a little bit on the on these spring clips as well. And then the ears, where the ears contact the caliper and caliper bracket, just put a little bit on there. It helps to slow down the rust or help to prevent rust and help to make the brake pads quieter. So at this point, make sure your finger's clean, and then stick your finger in the grease you've got on. Snap it in. There we go. So that is in and ready to go. I'm going to have to clean the edge of that pad there. And then we'll put the other one on as we go on. The other thing you want to do while you're doing this, while you got the grease out, is grease inside these slots on the caliper brackets. You can do these before you put them on. Don't get any on the rotor. If you do, it's not the end of the world. Just clean it off with some brake clean and a clean cloth. Okay, there we go. And I just got to prepare the other pad and we'll assemble this. I know it's sort of counterproductive. This is you grease it up and then you get it on the pad and then you use the brake clean and clean it up. But you got to do the best you can. There we go. Okay, let's put this on. Pardon me for jumping in front of you. I got one glove. Push the pins out. Oh, we need to service these. These type of pins don't get mucked up as bad as the others, so what I'm gonna do with these is clean them up and put some fresh silicone lube on them and reinsert them. Gee, I almost forgot that. Thanks for reminding me, guys. I'm sure glad you're there. A little bit of silicone grease, get it all the way around, reinsert. They're not bad actually. This particular type, I'm used to the old BMWs were like this. They seem to stand up quite well to the environment. They don't seem to rust or dry out the pins. The grease doesn't seem to dry out as bad. There we go. So now it's ready to go back together. Clean the fingers. Make sure the pads are in position. Make sure you don't kink your line, your brake line. Rotate around. Slip it over the brake pad, and there we go. Once it's in position, you'll be able to get the caliper pins to thread. So I'm going to do that and then I'll bring you back. I got these started and I'm just going to take my 7mm and run them in with the quick ratchet here. And then torque these to the 21 foot-pounds that is required. 21 is not a lot. I have an inch-pound. It's kind of right in between. 21 foot-pounds is like 245 inch-pounds. 244. So it's kind of like the maximum of this small torque wrench. So I have like 3 different torque wrenches that cover all this. Newton meters, 250, 245. So that's really not that tight. Looks like that electric ratchet, which doesn't have a lot of torque, managed to get it all the way down. So don't forget to put the plastic caps back in. And then I'm going to do a final cleanup of the rotor surfaces and reinstall the wheel. But nope, I'm not going to install the wheel yet because as part of any brake service, I always do a brake bleed. So to make sure that the brake fluid isn't old, you don't want to have rust happening inside the calipers or inside the master cylinder, whatever. Anyway, but that's it. I'll come back with a wrap up for you because I want to do the run out on the other side. So I'll show you that and then we'll do a wrap up. Okay, I'm gonna do the run out on this side. Just got it set up. Ooh, that's over 15, just over 15 thou. That's a pretty warped rotor. So yeah, so there we go. So these guys are not going to survive. So what can I say? Thanks for watching Gary's Garage. I could show you, but make sure you check the brake fluid. I recommend every service interval on your brakes, which is usually a few years, that if it hasn't been done in beforehand, bleed the brakes or flush the brakes. You know, put a half a liter to a liter through. And if you do this on a regular basis, you won't have water getting into your brakes and rusting the brake components from the inside, which can cause early brake component failure. So that just as a point of view. But if you wanted to know how to change your brakes and pads and rotors on a Mazda, it's pretty straightforward, and that's how you do it. Thanks for watching Gary's Garage. If you like the video, please press like, or send me a comment. Comments are great. I like to answer questions, try to get back to everybody who asks. Also, subscribe to the channel if you like the kind of material that I'm doing. I've got a few more jobs coming up, a couple more jobs on this car. And thanks again for watching Gary's Garage.